Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to snowy Detroit. We're ready to get started. Welcome to everyone both here within Detroit, Michigan, here in front of me, as well as streaming online through Gannett. On behalf of Go Forward, USA Today Network Diversity and Inclusion Team, welcome to our session on diversity and inclusion, the impact of diversity in the workplace. My name is Mark Purcell from Human Resources Talent Acquisition Team. I want to give a special shout out to our talent acquisition team, particularly Karen McGarry and Linda Ertz, who is quite inspirational in this initiative, as well as my talent acquisition teammates, and then to Dave Harmon and to Crystal Wheeler, who lead Gannett's diversity program here within the company, as well as my Michigan HR colleagues. One public service announcement before we get started. Tune in online next week, December 13th, 1 to 3 Eastern Standard Time, where Gannett board members and top women leaders will share their true stories behind their success. And you can watch that online through the McLean headquarters. Today in our session today, to me, one word that really hits home to me, it's important, is transform. I know it's an overused word, but how do we transform our work culture to be more diverse and more inclusive? It's just something to think about. I hope we get answers to that today. I'm sure we will. I'd like to introduce Brian Priester. He's our president of Michigan.com and the Detroit Free Press. And Brian will also introduce Kevin Hurd. And Kevin Hurd is our sales account executive here at Michigan.com, by day. And then actually by night, or by afternoon in this case, he's the president of the Detroit Regional LBGT Chamber. And he was instrumental in bringing this session together. So, and also to the panel who devoted their own time to come here, their own effort, to volunteer and speak with us today. We appreciate you coming. So I'd like to turn over to Brian. Brian?
Here I am. Thank you. This isn't on, is it? Is this showing up anywhere with you guys? I think you can hear me okay, right? It's probably for the webinar. Oh, it's for the webinar. Oh, okay, great. Okay. So just so everybody knows, I'm speaking right now just to the people in Michigan, not on behalf of the Gannett company-wide, but we had been talking about this idea for a month or so, and I'm really excited to be here, but I jotted just a few notes that I wanted my people to hear from me. I'm relatively new in my position here as a regional president in Michigan for about 4 months, and I've been thinking about 2017 and beyond, especially in the last 6 weeks or so as we looked at 2017 planning. And people who know me know this. To me, our success is completely about people. It's having the right people in the right positions. And it's the number one priority to me. And I have to say, as I've really thought about this, and as I look around the room, quite honestly, I want everybody to hear from me. I do not think we can or will grow and prosper as an organization if we do not have a workforce that reflects the communities we serve. And that is, we're not there now, and that is not going to happen by luck or accident. It's only going to happen through deliberate action by the people in this room. And I know it's not easy. We don't have a diversity switch I can flip on in another office that we've been just waiting to do that. It's going to take a lot of work. We're going to have sessions like this where we expand our thinking and seek a better understanding for what it takes to create a diverse and inclusive workplace. So why is that important? Well, first of all, I just think it goes part and parcel with being a decent human being kind of thing that everybody should feel. But in addition to that, it's good for business, for one thing. This is not about hiring people and finding the right candidates, and it's not an HR responsibility. It's everybody in this room's responsibility. It's not about meeting a number for corporate or on some list somewhere. It's about creating an inclusive and welcoming an environment for everyone. And again, it's about reflecting the communities we serve. It's about understanding and valuing people not like ourselves. People who look different from us, act different, and think different. To me, it's the diversity of thought is a huge piece of diversity. If we all think the same and act the same, we're not going to get to where we need to go as an organization. It's just that simple. Among other things that a diverse and inclusive workforce brings, it bolsters creativity, it improves employee retention, it improves the ability to recruit the brightest and the best. And as I said a second ago, candidly, it just improves business, and that's important for all of us. So I ask you, please, to be fully present today during this time. Silence your phone, close your laptops. I want everybody to be completely engaged, to give the panel who's donated their time to be here and to have this discussion with us so we can really start to think how we're going to tackle this so we can get where we need to go as an organization. So, Kevin, we met a couple weeks ago to talk about this, and I appreciate all you do for us and in the community, so I turn it over to you.
Thank you all for being here today. I'm going to give him his glasses. Good, everyone laughed. So today, first I would like to thank our president, Brian Priester, for being committed to this topic. I would like to thank Mark Purcell for reaching out to me and my organization in order to have this conversation. And then I will also like to thank the both of you and everyone here for me being able to marry not only my job here at Michigan.com, but also my avocational duty and my volunteerism at the Detroit Regional LGBT Chamber of Commerce. The Detroit Regional LGBT Chamber of Commerce mission is to promote and empower metropolitan Detroit LGBT, allied businesses, nonprofit members, corporate partners, and their employees through leadership, advocacy, and education, leading through professional development, advocating for inclusive business practices, and educating small and large businesses on LGBT certification and business growth. We advocate for the inclusion of all people, especially the LGBT community and their allied business partners in the southeastern Michigan area. We recognize that differences can organically create innovations in enterprise. Connecting our LGBT members to a strong base of allied partners and corporate support, we provide real growth opportunity for all businesses in the region. By building the LGBT Chamber of Commerce, leading Michigan's employee resource groups of equality, as an affiliate of National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, and Out and Equal Workplace Advocates, we own the landscape of LGBT employers and employees in this region. Therefore, I ask for you to join us and support our members and their businesses as we work towards true equality in Michigan and for its citizens. Now, as for HR, as everyone in HR will know, the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission was created in 1965 to open the door for women and minorities to find better employment opportunities in America's workplace. Businesses benefit from many ways of having employees with different backgrounds and different perspectives, which can lead to innovation in companies and companies' breakthroughs. Embracing in company culture is good for business. Bottom line, it's just the right thing to do. The wonderful people that will be navigating us this afternoon about this topic are to my left. We first have Kelly Bronson. He is the head of University Relations and Campus Recruiting Programs at Fiat Chrysler Automobiles. Thank you for being here. We have Chase Cantrell. He is the founder of the Director of Building Community Value, a Detroit-based community-inspired nonprofit whose mission is to redevelop vacant commercial space outside of the city's central business district. Thank you for being here as well. We have Shar Davenport as a special lecturer of writing and rhetoric in the Department of Oakland University and has an extensive trans advocacy work resume. We have Nikki Pardo. She is the owner of Global Alliance Solutions and is a consulting company that offers customized diversity training to management, staff, and law enforcement agencies. We have Jan Stevenson, who is the co-publisher of Pride Source Media Group, publisher of Michigan's weekly newspaper for the LGBT community, Between the Lines, and is also the vice president of the board of directors for the Detroit Regional LGBT Chamber of Commerce. And then lastly, we have Cristiano Rosamati. He is the AIDS, HIV, and STI prevention coordinator at the Arab Community Center for Economic and Social Services, and also is the board president of Al Jamia, an Arab and Middle Eastern nonprofit organization for gay individuals in the Middle East. So thank you all for being here. And honorable mentions inside of the audience, we're going to have Gina Graham from San Francisco and a native of Michigan, corporate consultant on mentoring and transgender policies. Thank you for flying across the country to be here today. We also have Marlon, Paige, and Val from Fiat Chrysler. Thank you for also being here as well. I think I've seen her somewhere. Raise your hand, please. Oh, you're over here. Thank you. And then we have, and that's it. Thank you for all being here, and let's get right to it. So, our first question today is, what do you say to hiring managers that says it's hard to find diverse candidates? I'm going to pose that first question to Kelly.
Thank you. It's great to be with you all today. I would probably answer the question with a question. I would like to know kind of where have you looked so far. For me, when it comes to talent acquisition, the biggest piece of money that I think companies and organizations can set aside is for a sourcing function. Talent acquisition professionals, in some cases, get very reactive and passive when it comes to looking for diverse talent, right? They post a job. You guys have probably all heard this whole post and pray type of mentality, right? We've all heard that term. We've all lived that term. But sourcing functions and a sourcing team actually takes things a little bit more proactively. Can actually start targeting diverse student groups, diverse workplace, or diverse senior professionals across the country. Some disciplines have a very small talent pool. We all know that. For us, electrical engineering is one of those very small talent pools across the country. So to find diverse talent within the electrical engineering talent pool requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of sourcing, proactive outreach, to actually start targeting specifically the candidates that you would like to engage. So sitting back, hoping for diverse talent to apply to your jobs is probably the first thing that I would want to tackle with that hiring manager. So.
Thank you. Anyone else on the panel want to tackle that answer or question? Go ahead.
I'd just like to say a statistic that I ran across is that 65 to 70% of new hires come from people who know people, and so what that tells me, to your point about don't be passive, is to reach out to community organizations that you're not accustomed to reaching out to. Look at publications, for instance, such as BTL, and talk to the people in the community that do not reflect what is already on your staff if you're trying to diverse your staff. And that could include colleges and universities, which I'm a little partial to, obviously, but also specific job fairs. There are LGBTQ job fairs that take place, and go there. Be active, just like you said. Don't be passive.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So you have multiple national diversity events that are wonderful opportunities to engage not only with college students, but with those experienced professionals who happen to be members of those societies. So the National Society of Black Engineers, the Society of Hispanic Professional Leaders for us. There's also National Black MBA. There's lots of different diverse organizations out there. If you kind of go research them, they're wonderful opportunities to engage with potentially tens of thousands of really highly qualified diverse talent.
Absolutely.
So,
look for those intersections.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you, Kelly and Shari. Go ahead.
My name is Cristiano Ramazadi. I'm co-founder of GLBT Association in Middle Eastern American, Al Jamia. Just in my opinion, it's different from company to company how to find a qualified candidate to be diverse. on our side, when we work in public health, specific from HIV/AIDS, from the beginning, what I'm trying to say from the beginning of the epidemic, people in the community moved forward, and took initiative, went to the street, demanding the government to have appropriate funding for focus on HIV prevention, et cetera, et cetera. Those people were either affected with HIV or infected with the disease. So what I'm trying to say, they created with the long term, since the epidemic, a great experience. They understand the community, they understand how to work around every high-risk population. What I'm trying to say, when it goes to hiring process for some nonprofit organization, they looked at what I have seen it for the last 3 years, that the requirement and the qualification for the candidate to be able to just, their resume be reviewed by a person, not rejected by computer, because was some of the requirement did not check the box. This is the biggest issue. And the issue, what happening is, the people who are most experienced, they can do the job. I am all about education. However, people of color is more likely has bachelor degree, maybe some college experience. A lot of them start to looking forward to having a master's degree to get better job. But it goes back to my point. The organization having a hard time, tough time for people who are experienced, ready to do the job from day one. Instead, they hire somebody who can check, he or she check all the boxes, master degree, I work as a manager, but has nothing to do with the position, doing et cetera, and they end up hiring a person of color just to fit the organization. We are diverse, but these diverse as was most qualified candidate to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it. No, I have multiple questions, but I can answer any question, but that's what I've been seeing it. Just to correct the first thing, I start my career at Access, and I worked for Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, the HIV/AIDS prevention and intervention section. So that was part of bio, my misunderstood.
All right, thank you so
So
much.
I think this is what's happening. We need to look at the right candidate. We need to look who's the most qualified person, reach out to community, understand the community, people of color, and have somebody who actually can fit the position, will be right for the position, can move the organization or program forward. In the meantime, if the HR requirement want them to have a master's degree, make them some incentive. My work gives $70,000 a year for people to get to B for college. This is just an example. If your position required master degree, okay, let's try work on it. While you have an excellent experience, we can benefit the organization.
You
and
make
the
a great
community.
point.
And people missing that point.
Yeah, you make a great point on that. Go ahead, Chase.
So I just want to add, so Kevin mentioned that I started my own nonprofit this year, but for most of my career, I practiced in large firms here in Detroit, large law firms. And I was very active in the recruitment process, and I think that we can't just look at the candidate. We also have to look at who's doing the recruitment. So for our team, it was self-selected. Attorneys who wanted to be part of the recruitment process could be, and oftentimes it was younger associates doing the interviewing, and we looked at the candidates, but had we had diversity training? Did we understand what the business case for having diversity in the firm was? I don't know that we did. So a lot of times when you're doing recruitment, just one individual or a team, it comes down to all things being equal, do we like this person, right? And we all come in with implicit biases into that process. So we also have to think about who's doing the recruiting.
Right. So let me go on to the next question really quickly. So there are a few programs that I've actually been involved in. One is at Fiat Chrysler when it comes to FCA Connect, which is a deliberate effort to invite minorities to their firm and actually be able to apply for positions and talk directly to the HR person. It's not the computer linguistics that are just thrown out of the resume because you don't have it. It's actually a person there viewing their resume, getting to know that person one-on-one, and then forwarding that directly to the hiring manager to make a decision. So what are some other deliberate efforts or some programs geared towards gaining diverse talent at your company? Anyone? You can speak about that a little bit more in depth, Kelly, if you wish.
Yeah, I would love to. At Fiat Chrysler, I really appreciate the words of being deliberate, because I agree. I think that if we want a diverse workforce, we have to be deliberate in achieving that goal. At Fiat Chrysler, we have 7 different, we call them business resource groups versus employee resource groups. Equals, right? They're the same. We just call them something a little different. But we have 7 of those organizations within our company that help not only propel the business forward from a diversity perspective, but also have representation around the table when we're making business decisions and how those business decisions potentially impact some of the different communities within our company. So for us, I think that the business resource groups are a great way for us to have our diverse talent stay connected. And we actually kind of advance that a little bit further because we actually take those business resource group representatives and employ them on campus as part of our campus teams, so that when we're engaging the diverse student populations, those diverse student populations now can hear from people that look like them, sound like them, have similar experiences, and it helps them connect with Fiat Chrysler just a little bit differently than if I were up talking to the National Society of Black Engineers, right? It's a little different, so.
Yeah. Nikki, Jan, you want to speak on that?
Actually, I was going to say the same thing. I was going to say utilize the ERG groups inside the company because they're the connection to whatever community you're trying to reach out to. And as Shar said, if 60% of the people who you're hiring know somebody inside, it seems like the ERGs is a logical place to ask if they're trying to recruit people from a given community if we already got them inside.
And it's internal.
So,
Built internally.
Yeah.
so just a question to Jan. Do you think 60% of people hired to know people inside is a good idea?
I
I'm
think
sorry
it's-
about my question because I want to respond to that question.
I think it's reality. I think that you're right that self propagates self. You can fight that or you can work with it. And I think one of the things that's happened over time, I worked in corporate America a long time where I'm older than a lot of you, and it was very weird for a woman to be doing what I was doing. I was the only one in my department. I was the outsider. 100% of the recruiters were men.
It's true.
And I think that one of the things being intentional and deliberate about recruiting is not only thinking about realizing you have to know the people to hire them. So there has to be some connection, and use the people that you want to hire people like them. And that goes not only for diverse issues, but talent as well, if they have a skill that you want.
Thank you. I have a direct question to Shar. A colleague of yours, Amy Hunter, spoke about tokenism in our previous panel discussion. I wanted you to dive deeper into that ideal. Tokenism is the practice of making only a symbolic effort to do a particular thing, especially by recruiting a small number of people from an underrepresented group in order to give the appearance of sexual or racial equality within the workforce. Can tokenism be disrespectful? And if so, how do we avoid it?
Do I get the rest of the time?
That's a heavy question.
First of all, I'm really glad to be in the Stevie Wonder room because Stevie Wonder is from Saginaw, and that's where I spent my childhood. How do you avoid tokenism? Well, first of all, let's be clear about one thing. Having a policy that includes things like gender identity or expression, sexual orientation, and so on, that's great. But if you don't practice it, it doesn't really mean anything. And so I really think it's important that if you say you represent us, and this is from Bambi Salcedo, said this at a conference, and she's basically the premise was if you say you represent us, then you must include us. don't just have us at the table, we need to participate in the decision-making process. That's really important, that my qualifications, my expertise is not just about transgender issues or LGBT issues, but also I can make business decisions. I have that knowledge. So if you diversify, my feeling is don't just have me there to speak about diversity, but include me in all the other decisions as well. And I think that's important. So you really want to stick to the qualifications of a position, not just the need to fill a space.
So does anyone
Does
on
that
the
make
panel
sense?
feel like they were a token at one point in their professional careers, or did they have a voice? Chase, it looks like you want to say something.
So I'll tell a very brief anecdote. So there was a time at my very first firm where we were going after a client who was a general counsel of a large tier 1 manufacturer. He was African American. They wanted me to be the lead on our team from the firm, but there was a concern that he might think that we were putting me up because I was black and he was black. So, we got into a room, me and 3 partners. We'd have very real conversation about that subject. Do you feel like a token, Chase? We want to avoid the general counsel thinking the same, making sure that I had the right sort of powers within the structure to actually do the work. So there was a very frank conversation about race. And I think that that's important when you build these teams to talk about it. But there are certainly times within law firms where edicts come down from large clients, the big 3 especially, where you have to have a diverse team. And you do have young talent of color on these teams who are not getting the proper mentorship. They don't have the right authority on the team to do the work. And I see that happen a lot. But the conversations need to actually happen between management and staff when these sort of teams are built. Thank
you. Let's go on to the next question. We spoke about BRGs or ERGs earlier. So why is it that why is it important for companies to continue to support employee resource groups or business resource groups? Just for people that don't know what ERGs here in the room or watching, we have an employee resource group, our voluntary employee-led groups that serve as a resource for members in the organization by fostering a diverse, inclusive workplace aligned with organizational mission, values, goals, business practices, and objectives. Other benefits include the development of future leaders, increased employee engagement, and the expanded market reach. So, does anyone understand or want to tell us why it is important to support and start employee resource groups? Nikki, anyone?
I'll take it. I worked for a major corporation, and we had ERGs, and within the ERG, and it was white. It was predominantly white, and there was one for African American women. So I went, and it was extremely helpful because we were able to talk about different situations. In my department, I reported right to the president of the corporation, and I was the only black person on the floor. So it was finally, I got an opportunity to actually speak to other black women. And then it also had a mentorship component to it. So, and it was just really proactive. It wasn't reactive. It wasn't us just can you believe this happened to me? Did the same thing happen to you? It was very positive, on the upswing. And I think the ERGs are very relevant because it shows that the C-suite or just the whole corporation cares. And I want to believe that it is genuine when these ERGs are established. And now they're coming up with creative. I read something like left-handed. I mean, it's really, I guess left-handed people need support too. So,
Yes, we do.
It's really, oh, you're lefty. See? So I just think that, again, it's kind of from the top down, look, we get it. We are here for you. And even though if we can't support you, it's like as a white male, then we will provide at least a safe space for you to interact with each other and kind of bounce things off one another.
Jan?
One of the things I think is really important is to not think of the ERGs as something separate and threatening. And we've seen that happen in a lot of companies where, like, why do those people have to get to be together? What are they talking about? And I think that having an ERG where people can identify with each other can debunk stereotypes. They can learn from each other about how to deal with situations where they run into discriminatory actions that might happen in their workplace without having to overreact or not feeling like they have any recourse. The other thing too is that what I've seen with the ERGs that I interact with, and I interact with a lot of them as the paper, is it increases their connectivity to their industry and to their employer. They feel a loyalty that is really kind of profound. Like one of the ones is the auto show's coming up, and there's the GM ERG has a party every year, and I go, and it's all the car people, and I don't know what they're talking about. They don't talk about, it's all about cars. They just love, it's like porn. They've got it up on they've got the cars up on the wall, And so, but what really struck me was what really bound these people together were they were car people who happened to be gay. And I think it benefits their commitment to General Motors and to the industry itself too, and helps with all kinds of other things too.
And so I want to move to the next question really quickly. So what should ERGs be working towards? What are the goals that and objectives they should set out? Shar?
Really? Well, I think one of the things different places where I've worked where we've had employee research or resource groups, is that the goal of an ERG is not to develop a community of oneness, and I think we need to be aware of that, but rather to make us comfortable with ourselves in an environment where we might be one minority class or another, but also to celebrate that diversity and to honor it. We each come to whatever point we are in life along our own paths, and none of us have the same exact path. And we need to honor the paths of others as well as our own. So I think if I'm comfortable in an ERG like that, it honors that.
Well, regards to our to Al Jamia, Al Jamia is running by volunteers. We don't have direct funding. We always have fundraising campaign to work on our objective. And it's run by volunteer. All of us volunteers. A bunch of us. One thing we learned is we always consult with the board. Right now we have a community advisory group. It's a very diverse group. We worked hard for the community to recruit the transgender GLBT people presented 21 different Arabic countries.
Wow.
There is a 21 different Arabic country, 21 different dialect, 20 different culture, religious as well. So we tried hard the last 2 years to put this group together. That group led by one of the board member. What I'm trying to say, we empower this group to work on our mission and our objective, what we're trying to achieve. With this group, we were able to conduct need assessment last year, working together with UFM and Arbor's Sex Lab. This group defined the most important issue in an Arab American community, what they need to be done. Accepting of being a GLBT Arab community, being a gay Muslim proud, and also how we can address those issues. And when we conduct the need assessment, we empowered this group to lead this focus group. Of course, and oversee with the board members. We empower them to tell us how we develop the survey. We empower them to work with us with the process, how we done. Right now, we came up with the conclusion. We are in a process to to goal to raise about $20,000 to have a first anti-homophobic campaign in the city of Dearborn, and also in city of Sterling Heights was the high majority of Muslim, Arab, and a Chaldean, so it would address the homophobic within this community. This idea came out from the advisor group, which is a bunch of them are volunteers, and like I said, our organization, we don't have any paid staff, so that's working with us very well for the last 3 years.
It's
So-
great. It's great to have passion, especially people who generally have a passion about something as far as diversity and inclusion, and fighting against a stigma. Sharon, you had
I just
something?
wanted, I actually wrote down three key things here, and that is talent attraction and recruitment is enhanced, I think. And I think that, let's be realistic, that should also be one of the goals of an ERG. Talent engagement, development, and retention. It's really important. You want to have experienced staff or faculty or employees. And then also understanding your customers, the communities that you serve and the markets. You want to reach out to those markets, and ERGs can help you do that.
Chase, you had something?
Yeah, I would just add that not to just think of ERGs as a positive thing. There's also a danger if you have an organization from the top that doesn't actually value the diversity. If you have an ERG and your organization is thinking of it as a group where people go off to the side to, air their grievances, talk amongst themselves, celebrate their diversity, but if they have real grievances that aren't then translated to the executive staff or the board, if no one actually engages with that ERG to make changes within the organization, it can also be a demoralizing factor. So there has to be a commitment at the top as well to take those concerns seriously from that group.
And again, if you say you represent us, then you have to include us.
Exactly.
The other thing that I would add, Kevin, is that I think the ERGs have a wonderful opportunity to help educate and enlighten folks that may have some sort of thought about what they think they know of a certain group. I think it's incumbent upon the ERGs to bring those folks in and help educate and enlighten folks so that there isn't this thing that they're not aware of anymore. Because we typically get afraid of the things we don't know. So I think it's incumbent upon the ERGs to help express what that looks like so that people aren't necessarily afraid to ask questions. We also, I'm a member of our LGBT community, I'm also a military officer, so I belong to two different groups. I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that people understand that it's okay to ask me questions without me being offended. I'm here to help. I'm here to help educate and enlighten folks that may not understand. So I think ERGs have a wonderful opportunity to do that. So.
Great. So I have a direct question towards Jan. I've known you for about 3 years now. We work very closely together at the Chamber. And you mentioned to me about a previous employer speaking negatively about your sexual orientation. I'm not going to say the employer's name, but can you walk us through this experience and how it happened?
Sure, it was a while ago. I was a corporate banker at the time, working for a local bank here in town. And I had moved here from Philadelphia, where I had been a healthcare specialist in lending. So when my customers were all hospitals and medical practices. The bank that I worked for didn't have a healthcare group, so I just went into general lending when I moved here. And I moved here because my partner at the time is a cardiologist, and she got a job at Henry Ford. So we moved here kind of cold. I didn't really know Detroit that well. So a couple months after I was working there, the bank decided they did want to start a healthcare group, and they approached me and asked me if I would lead it, and they were going to put some lenders together, we're going to have a group, we're going to do this. And it was like, great, because I was fascinated by it. I thought it would be really good. So as we were meeting with the corporate leaders in the bank to make this happen, at one point, I was sitting in a group with the senior team of the bank, and my boss was there, and he said, this is going to be really great that we're going to do this because the only other bank in town that has a healthcare group is NBD, and the guy that runs it's a faggot, and nobody wants to deal with him. I wasn't out at work, so I didn't have what I perceived to be great courage on the part of the people who join ERGs now. And there were other reasons, but 3 weeks later I resigned. Because I knew I had no future there. I knew as soon as they figured out I was gay, I was done. And one of the things that if there had been an ERG, fast forward now 20 years. I do diversity training, and one of the clients that I've worked with before is that bank. And they invited me in about 2 years ago to speak to their team. And I'm thinking, great, it's gonna be no name badges around the corner at a coffee shop, and, no, we're not gonna. And I have to say, I was totally blown away. We were in the boardroom, there were 200 people there, everybody was a VP or higher. The president of the bank was there, and they totally embraced the formation and launching of the ERG, the gay ERG within that bank. And I have to say that the gay community now recognizes that bank as a partner. And I know that it's helped their bottom line. So it's a success story that came from a lot of, my story's not unique. People continue to lose their jobs because they're gay right now. And one of the things I wanted to mention too about ERGs, I think a principal role of the ERGs is to make the organizations that they work with aware of their own policies. In Michigan, it's legal to fire someone because of their sexual orientation. It's
Don't
not
get any
a protect-
ideas today.
It's not a protected class. Pardon?
It's not a protected class. Don't get any ideas.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I always threaten my straight employees. I say, if you don't act up, I'm gonna fire you. But anyway, so LGBT people have a reasonable fear when they're at work about coming out, because you do have the opportunity to fire them on that basis. And Lear Corporation is an example that had very poor policies on LGBT employment in about 2 years ago. They wanted to participate in our job fair, our LGBT job fair. So we met with the HR people and said, we would love to have you, but we're going to tell everybody that according to the national ratings, you have a 15% rate, and you're going to be competing with other companies there that have a 100% rating on LGBT issues in their internal policies. And it's especially important to employees in Michigan since we don't have any legal protections. And they went, well, all right. And that was in August, and by our event in March, they'd increased that to 85%, and they're now at 100%. And that was the ERG inside that did that pushed the HR department and showed them, got them connected with the people that could change the policies and helped them draft the policies. So I think it's a source of information. There may be problems you aren't even aware of, like that.
All right, thank you. So we're going to go into our next question. I hope everyone is enjoying the conversation and getting some great ideas on how to, look past the next question, actually. I love Nikki's answer the last time we spoke about unintentional bias and heterosexism. Can you explain a little bit more about that, and for people who are not familiar with those terms?
Well, for one, there's some bias going in here because I've been on several panels, and this is the most attractive attractive audience. So I don't know what the selection process was, but there's some bias going on right here.
We had to fly people in from San Francisco.
Yeah, we're flying in people. This is like, wow. So unconscious bias, to kind of go back, I am the very proud owner of a Detroit-based diversity training and consulting company. So I'm kind of wearing two hats here from, of course, Global Alliance. And we really, really take a deep dive into unconscious bias. And when we start unpacking it, I have my participants take a collective sigh, because we all have it. You can't. I'm consider myself a diversity expert in my own mind. I have a bias against people who talk low. Because I come from a loud family, married into a loud family. We're just loud, loud, loud. So it's just coming you just have to respect the differences and kind of maybe fine-tune yourself, and that's a whole nother thing. But now I used to work for the Michigan Department of Civil Rights for almost 10 years. And so I enforced the civil rights laws through the Attorney General's office on a state level, and as well as the EEOC. And it's so funny, because I did say this on the other panel, I think it is ridiculous that the LGBT community is not a protected class. And I can say it now because I'm not there, but I was rogue. Whenever I would get a case, I would just fit it under sex. And my supervisor would say, oh my God, Nick, you're going to get us both fired. And I'm like, just turn your head, but at least make companies accountable. It can't go anywhere because, again, it's not, the community isn't a protected class, but at least kick it back to the respondents for them to actually respond to the charge. So that's really, yeah, just, basically with unconscious bias, you have to check it at the door. Because what could end up happening, again, putting my civil rights hat on, you could end up costing the company a lot of money. From just a mistake, like Jan said, he did not even probably realize what he was saying, It's a bias, so I get it. I'm not saying it's right. I understand. I mean, you would be shocked at the complaints that used to come through our office. But, again, like I said, and I'm not giving anyone the license or a pass to say anything hurtful, but basically, just check it at the door. You have to be really conscious because it goes back to that bottom line, which might not just be, I guess it's all monetary. It could affect the reputation and the brand. If something gets out, something like that, you could have blasted. I don't know if social media was around then.
No.
They better be glad. So to get it out there and, just we see what happened with Bookies and another restaurant at Livernois and 7 Miles. So, you just have to really be careful on, with your biases. But it's okay. We all have them.
It will work. Go ahead.
Can I add something to that? Sometimes it will take a long process to actually make the big organization to change the policy to protect GLBT people and gender identity. An example, I started working at Access Community Health Research Center, one of the largest nonprofit organizations in Dearborn, in 2001, and I resigned in 2010. Anyway, I'm trying to say, when I started my first interview, because they were looking for openly gay Middle Eastern person, my interview was in a basement. So they were afraid, they're like, oh, who's this? Long story short, who's this gay guy is going to start the HIV program, etc. Then they welcomed me. They had a lot of questions. They had a lot of afraidness from the community reaction. But the work we did with the organization, and we did what's the right thing for the community, the management and the board of directors saw our work, saw the attention of the U.S. Health and Human Services, how important it is to focus on high-to-reach population like an Arab American, gay, bisexual, Western Arab American HIV prevention. They saw the attention. They saw more involved. When we did the need assessment back then, in 2004, the organization looked at that and said, there's a lot of need. They started dialogue with the Muslim community talking about HIV/AIDS and how important to focus on the whole community, not just only straight people. Dialogue went for a while. Long story short, last year, after 15 years working in HIV prevention, because my partner took over the program when I resigned, and it's still the same mission. The HIV program focused on high-risk population. Majority are gay, bisexual, transgender, Middle Eastern. So this is what the funding goes. The organization looked at it and said, we have a lot of terrific staff, all of them openly gay. They welcome us. But first, I felt I went back to the closet, but the surprises came last year when the board of directors had changed the policy, bylaw. They added protection for GLBT, including gender identity. So they added in policy, they added in the bylaw that don't discriminate against this particular group. And that was a huge successful Arab American community.
Thank you.
So they take a long time sometimes, took 15 years, but we get there.
That's great. All right, Nikki, real quick.
Yeah, I just want to say, on your intro, that I really commend the fact that you even are conscious about it and that you are aware, because I think that the worst thing companies can do is bury their heads in the sand. I really do. And I lost a huge client, a potential client, when we did an assessment of the C-suite, and it was just basically all white males. And I said, I brought it to his attention, and he threw me out. But I have a friend who works there, and even though I didn't get the contract, but the wheels started turning. And so we that was in the middle of the summer, but we fast forward, and now he's making a conscious decision. He'll never admit it to me. And that's okay. That's okay. But, he's making a conscious decision with recruitment, and that's where he started. That was his kind of like aha moment. And so turn for the positive. But again, I just commend, I hope you're not an anomaly. I hope that, and so it's kind of like an obligation, and I hate to just focus on you, but it's almost, you have an obligation now to share that with other leaders and other, CEOs, executives, whatever, especially when they see how yours is gonna work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
A case study.
I wanted to echo what
Oh, I'm
Nikki
sorry.
said, and also to say that the timing on this is really important too, because the HIV community, the Muslim community, the gay community, we're completely freaked out right now because of the election and the potential for backlash. Well, not the potential, the oncoming backlash. So to see corporations not back off right now is really important.
I honestly believe that businesses do influence policy, and regardless of, you see the backlash with RAFTA happened in Indiana with Mike Pence was governor. There was a lot of backlash from the business community because they understand that diversity and inclusion is good for business. And marketing research shows that the LGBT community and African American community are truly first adopters when it comes to new products and services. So it's very important to make sure that you keep that market share. I'm going to go on to the next question, and this is a direct question towards Chase. In a January 2016 Fortune magazine article, Why Race and Culture Matters in the C-Suite, it focused on some black male professionals' experience in corporate settings. And I quote, "Many of these men, for example, spoke of having to constantly change their public means, striving to appear focused at the office, but not too aggressive, hungry, but not threatening, well-dressed, but not too showy, talented, but not too damn talented." Nearly all had experienced conversations being shut down or being shut out when matters of race were brought up. So my question to you was, have you ever felt like this, and what is your honest opinion about why this happens?
Well, so even though I've left, to some extent, left the practice of big firm law, I still serve as a mentor for a lot of young attorneys of color who I have had as interns while I was practicing law and who have been friends over the years. And the constant stories that I get from them about how work is allocated within the firm, how mentorship occurs within the firm setting, how they feel unable to be their authentic selves on the job. I feel that I might have been the exception that proves the rule. In fact, I was unapologetically me when I was working there. But at the very end, my firm didn't have an exit interview policy, but I sort of forced it upon them. I had lunch and meetings with all the partners I worked with, including the chairman of the firm. And one of the partners told me, really confided, saying, "You were a controversial hire?" This is the first time I had ever heard this. "You were a controversial hire?" And I'm like, "Oh, really? Why?" "Well, you always speak your mind." That was the phrase. And it really shocked me after all those years being there that was controversial. So yes, definitely that is something that men of color deal with in the corporate setting. And I think at least in professionally regulated, or regulated professions like law, accounting, medicine, the phrase, the good old boy network, still applies very much. You think about the power structures in many of these big companies, it's a lot of white males. So it's hard for a young professional of color to sort of break into these circles where you don't have those same pieces of culture that connect people. You didn't grow up in the same place, you might not have the same interests, so it's hard to break into those conversations, be invited out for drinks after work, etc. So it's an uphill battle, but it definitely exists.
Something I want to say too. Yeah, I'm putting my civil rights hat on again. When I was at the department, there were two things that just used to just drive me crazy. That was when members of the LGBT community were discriminated against. In fact, I was so adamant and such an advocate that my coworkers are like, "Nikki, do you want to tell us something?" I'm like, no, it's just that I am biracial, multiracial, and it's like you know, who is to say that some of my ancestors couldn't have gotten married, or I'm in an interracial marriage, so, you know, it's like, you can't help who you fall in love with. So that's why I explained it. That's the only way where it's like, you cannot help who you love. And the second thing was black males. When I was at the Department of Civil Rights, I used to be a juggernaut on cases with black males, because, of course not Chrysler, of course not that, but corporations would spin these crazy webs, and then the next thing you know, brothers are caught in this web, and it's like, no. So what I would try to do, I mean, like, I would fight to the death. Like, the attorneys at the MDCR, they would just say, okay, Nikki, give it up. And I'm like, no, I know it's something here. But and you don't have to shake your head and agree, but I just know that these webs were spun, and they would circumvent policy, and they know civil rights laws, so they knew how to circumvent it, and that would just burn me up. You know, and the next thing you know, black men are caught in these webs, and like you said, you know, held to another standard. I'll never forget, I had a claimant who was about 6'6", and he used to say when he would interact with white women, he would always sit down, you know, because he didn't want to tower over them. He had a very booming voice, and he would kind of reel it in a little bit, you know, and soften his voice. And he's like, gosh, you know, and just interview. I mean, of course, we were neutral parties, so I couldn't advocate for him, but, you know, it just used to just boil my blood that, you know, it's so sad that black men would have to modify themselves in order to comply or conform.
I want to ask a question to Kelly, and thank you guys for that. Kelly, in the same article of Fortune magazine, Leslie Miley, the highest-ranking black engineer at Twitter, proposed a new job to focus on onboarding and welcoming minority tech talent into the firm. He got an earful. After this particularly tense conversation with his boss about recruitment tactics, Miley claimed that he was told, diversity is fine, but we don't want to lower the bar. If his claim is true, why is actively seeking minorities seen as lowering the bar?
I don't know that I can speak to that. As far as an educated response, you know, that article, that seems like a really, it's a very short-sighted response, I think, to whoever I was talking to. You know, onboarding is one of those things that if you don't do it well, you're going to lose the talent that you have, right? I think all of us HR professionals understand that. Onboarding is your first opportunity to set the standard of what your company is about and how inclusive your company is or is not. So I find it almost appalling that would be the response, to be quite honest. I think that anything that companies can do to help underrepresented groups fit in better, to feel connected to the company, there shouldn't be an expense that's too high, because the recruiting cost to replace those folks because they leave is much higher. So I don't know, I'm a little kind of appalled by that response, to be quite honest. So.
Anyone else want to take that question?
Yeah.
I would just like to make a quick point as well, and it has to do with intersections. And, you know, and the previous question was, one of the previous questions was explain unintentional bias and heterosexism. And that slide itself exhibits an unintentional bias from where I'm sitting. Because where's cisgenderism, for instance? The assumption that I've encountered personally is I used to be cisgender, but now I'm transgender. And no, that I used to be like you, but I never was. And so I caution people against saying something like that. So the T isn't a letter of convenience because it sounds better than LGB. It's actually, it's there. And to remember that when you're talking to intersex, gender nonconforming, and non-binary people. If you don't know what those mean, then you need to talk to me or somebody who does. And but the intersection of we'll call it trans, is with race is almost overwhelming. Something in the neighborhood of 70 to 80% of all the violence perpetrated against LGBT people. Something like 70 to 80% of all the job discrimination and so on, healthcare discrimination in healthcare is heaped upon the shoulders of transgender people, and nobody more than transgender women of color. And how do you bring talent in that has been denied the opportunities to either develop that talent or be like the scarecrow? I have a brain, I just don't have a diploma. And how do you open yourselves up to bring that talent in? I'm not suggesting that I have the answer. I'm not suggesting anyone does. But I think to be aware that that answer needs, or that question needs to be answered, is critical. And so it's not just, diversity isn't just LGB and race or sex. It's a lot. I mean,
Gender identity,
it's
expression.
huge. Yeah.
Redheads, brunettes.
Redheads? I
Wow.
have a redheaded daughter.
You know, it's really, it's a great point, because, you know, my background is in the university relations space. I'm on campuses quite often, and a lot of the analytical work we do to determine what campuses and what schools we recruit from, a lot of that has to do with some of the gender and diversity mix at those universities. We do that purposely because we want to make sure that our talent pool is representative of what we're looking to attract. I find it fascinating that some of the information that we're starting to get from schools is that they're starting to drop gender categories.
Well,
So it's interesting that we're no longer able to get male-female breakdowns. There's no such reporting anymore. So I think the trend will continue.
I've been fired by 2 universities who named me the teacher, or one university in a high school in New York years ago that fired me after I had been named Teacher of the Year.
Wow.
Oh, wow. No, that's unfortunate.
Just a small comment. I mean, this is the discrimination, including the discrimination against people of color and LGBT people. It goes on all around the state, even in state level hiring. I witness a lot of changes happening with the state level. All the contractors who are people of color. There is a lot of contractors who are people of color. They're not state employee. With a time when they change the management and see the floor was busy, change a little bit color, then boom, what happened? The over management, it changed job description, make them to be a state position, and it changed the qualification, it changed the requirement education, and replaced the people who are experienced, been doing their job for 15 to 20 years with white person, have no experience, but just the education requirement. I saw it in the last 3 years, and it's been going on for years. That's a big issue. We need to talk about it more often. I know they know the rules. I know they know the rules. That's why they hire them as a contractor, not as a state employee in the first place, because it's hard to fire state employee. So just to bring it out there, it's not only GLBT people. It's a lot of time focus, most of the people of color.
Already.
I've seen
I know that we're
division
going-
turn from 80% diverse to like 40% diverse.
I know that we're going close to our ending of our streaming time, so I do
Sorry.
have one more question, but I'm going to end it with these words, and then we'll go into Q&A for all the people here. And that's America at its best. Our ability to connect, our ability to see ourselves in somebody, to be an ally to the marginalized, to the dispossessed, to the discriminated against, to recognize our joy and our struggles and our fears and our hopes and our love in somebody. President Barack Obama said that January 31st. I urge us to keep having these conversations, but remember, conversations are merely that without action. So let's be active and reach the goal of having a workforce that is reflective of the community we serve. I thank you all for being here, and all of you that are watching online and across our great company of Gannett and the USA Today. And again, thank you for having me, and thank you guys for being here. We'll continue this conversation offline, but we'll make sure that it is known. Thank you.